Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you don't know me, I'm Clark Keith and I'm a first year medical student studying at King's College London. So in this video we'll be looking at the interviews part of the application process for EMDP. So I want to make this video as short as possible, so yeah, let's get started. So starting with the basics, the main really introductory points. So this is as of 2022, and if this does change, I'll make another video probably. The interview will be done online. It'll be a panel interview and it will consist of 2 interviewers. And what I mean by panel interview, if you're not familiar, basically it's kind of more of a traditional interview rather than that of an MMI, where you have multiple stations and you have to do different things at each of those stations. So it will be more question focused rather than kind of task based, and it'll kind of feel more like a conversation between you and the interviewer. So moving on to the next part, we'll now look at what's going to be assessed. Values and personality based attributes are going to be assessed. So this could be by scenarios, or this could just be by the interviewers ask you questions about yourself. But they'll also look at knowledge of topical medical issues. So this can be things like COVID-19, the pandemic itself, to how the government has handled the pandemic, vaccines, euthanasia, lots of topical medical issues. Also being assessed is ethical reasoning. So in a lot of med schools, especially recently in these past few years, have emphasised quite a lot of ethical reasoning. Also communication skills will be assessed, but this will actually be kind of assessed as you carry out your interview. It would be a good idea to brush up on your communication skills as you do that. It's just practice. If the more you practice, the more you can brush up on those skills and you kind of be fluent and natural as you do it in the interview. So additional points, interviewers will have no prior knowledge of any of the candidates before they carry out the interview. So this also means that they wouldn't have looked at your personal statement. Also predicted grades, UCAT, GCSE scores, those are only used when deciding to give you the interview. So once you've carried out your interview, they won't look at that anymore. So basically this means once you've done your interview, only the interview score will be taken into account when giving you the offer. And obviously this is unless you're in a tiebreaker situation with another candidate who has scored the same interview score as you. So really emphasize the interview preparation in order to get that offer. So we'll now look at my techniques in approaching the interview. So this is quite a much requested part for interviews. I've been receiving a lot of messages about how I approach interviews and the tips that I've got. What I knew I had to prepare for were questions and maybe scenarios. So I kind of took this approach. So basically there was 2 things I had to kind of prepare for. There was one where I had to prepare for things I was likely to be asked about. So these are the common stuff like, why do you want to do medicine? Why this university? So in this kind of sense, to prepare for this part, I'd write a list of all the common questions that, would usually come up. And below those questions, I kind of bullet point things that I might say about this. And remember, this is personalised to you, and this might be different to other candidates, but make sure to quite a strong message for the interviewer and make it seem like you're the ideal candidate. So this kind of helps when, you've got mock interviews, you already have an idea of what you're going to say when you're given a question that's like probably asked quite a lot. This also helps for the interview on the day as well. So that's kind of the first part of my approach. You might think, well, you can think of as many questions as you can, but you kind of still be caught out, right? Just in case it's a question that you've never thought of, right? And yeah, that's true. That's actually what I worried about when I was preparing for the interviews. As much as I'd prepare, there'd always be that one question that just my mind would be blank because I would have never came across it. Like, what do I do in that situation? You might ask, so how would I actually prepare for that? The thing is, this is actually preparable though. So for me, my best advice would be to read up on all the relevant interview topics. You can find most of them on the Medic portal. So yeah, now that you've kind of looked at and read up on all the relevant interview topics, you can keep doing this as the interview day comes up, just to kind of familiarize yourself, just so that when you do the interview, you've kind of got this field of words already in your head that you can jump to and use if you ever need to. It kind of gives me cues. So basically, if an interviewer asks me a question and I already have a set of like field of words in my head, I already have a few cues and kind of directions to talk about. Rarely they'll kind of give you questions that you've never heard of. It'll kind of be questions you might kind of expect, but it's always safe to practice just being able to improvise. And yeah, so the best way to prepare for these is just to do as many mock interviews as you can. So this means if you're given a question that you haven't came across before and you're already used to thinking on the spot, if you've already done so many mock interviews, so you already have a group of topics and cues in your head that you can kind of jump to just in case. Obviously this becomes easier the more you practice, hence why I say do as many mock interviews as you can. Practice with teachers, family. Try to organise mock interviews with teachers especially, because that really helped me out. It's the best way to kind of simulate a real interview, and by simulating a real interview, that's the best way you can practice. The more you get used to feeling tested and being more on the spot and having to improvise, the easier the interview day will be. Another technique you can use, so let's say, you don't have a mock interview around the time, or you don't even have any teachers or anything, or any people that can help you. If you just want to practice in your own time, what you can do, which I've done, you can kind of randomize a list of interview questions. Just put as many questions as you can into a randomizer, and it'll kind of randomize, obviously, and then choose a question. And in that way, it kind of simulates, an interviewer asking you a question that you have to kind of be prepared for. When you answer that, it makes you get used to having to improvise and kind of be on the spot. And then another thing I did, which was really kind of a really good idea that I saw, basically it's a table of qualities thing. So basically I'd list out, I'd have an image, I have to move out the way for that. But yeah, just to add a little bit more space, here's an example. Basically, you've got a list of qualities. So this one is like communication. So under that quality of communication, you've got to put examples. So where have you shown this? I've shown this in sports. I've shown this in I know when I was at work and something. So that first column was examples. The second column would be, how does this link to my suitability in medicine? And the next column, it'll be, okay, so when I had good communication skills in football, it means that when I'm a doctor, I can be able to pick out really quick information and relay that onto my colleagues in a really fast-paced environment, which means as a result, improved patient care. And then the last column would kind of be, so why is this important in medicine? And that'll kind of say, so communication is obviously really important. Being able to communicate really complex information and kind of digest that and give that out in a way that people who might not understand the topic will understand a bit more clearer. So basically, this table is laid out like this for a reason, with these 3 columns. And basically this reason is so that you're kind of already used to, in your head, thinking, okay, so what's an example? I've shown this. How does this mean I'm suitable for medicine? And why is this important in medicine in general? And when you have that flow of thinking already, it's easier in an interview. Your interviewers will kind of like that. They'll really appreciate your kind of structured answer, and they'll appreciate that as a kind of good communication skill, which is already assessed alongside good body language and posture and everything, like that structure of being able to talk about your answers in a structured way. So yeah, moving on to resources. So I already spoke about Medic Portal. I'll give a list or kind of just screen recording of me going through some examples. Basically, lots of topics. There's loads of things you can look at. Feel free to read up on them. I'm not affiliated with them at all, but I used them myself when I was doing interviews. Also, I used Ali Abdal's medical interviews playlist. I'll kind of link that on the description below. His free crash course is also really good as well. What I like about that especially is it dives into a lot more detail about things that aren't really commonly spoke about. You do have to pay to get the whole thing. The free content on there is still really useful. The structure that he talks about is quite helpful. I kind of benefited from it. It might not be for everyone, might not be for you, but it's worth checking it out. And yeah, just some final comments really. So interviews are kind of just chill, if you just practice and get used to the environment of being tested and ask questions. The interviewers are also on your side. They're not really there to catch you out. They just want the best out of you, to see why you're a good candidate. If you guys have any other questions or any other videos you'd like me to make, literally just comment that below or put that on my Instagram, which I'll put here. Yeah, thanks for watching. If you have an interview, good luck. If you're thinking of applying to medicine and you're just interested about how the interviews process works, I hope this is quite a comprehensive video for you. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next video.